Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. Now, I was just thinking back to last harvest on this particular field, Brian. We were right in about the same spot here filming, and we were in soybean stubble. And I remember on the far end of the field, they were just getting started spreading fertility out for the next year. In that case, it was lime that we were putting out. But I remember they wanted us to get done filming so they could spread lime over here too. Well, one thing that may get spread on this field this year is manure. And we're going to talk about manure application and some considerations that you should have going into next year.
One of the other considerations you might make is how do you manage your ground if you've had a bad disease year this year? What can you do to prevent those diseases from going forward, especially when we're talking beans on beans or corn on corn, or maybe continuous wheat? We'll talk about that on today's show.
Our weed of the week can certainly be a problem. We'll show you how to stop it on your farm. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time each week, we try to talk about a farm concept and maybe how that relates to non-farmers or something that non-farmers would be interested in. Well, one of the big things that the non-farm community has been concerned about is that pesticides we're using on the farm today are toxic to other forms of life that are out there. So for example, if I go out to spray my field for soybean aphids, that I kill all the beneficial insects, and boy, that's a big concern in our environment. Well, first of all, let's just look at the big picture here. In the whole world, what percent of the acres are actually getting sprayed for soybean aphids or for grasshoppers or for anything else? It's a tiny, tiny, minuscule percentage. So are we really doing that much damage to the world's beneficial insects? Absolutely not. Okay, the other side of it is now there actually are insecticides out there that are very specific, so specific in fact that, like in the case of the new Transform insecticide, that will kill soybean aphids and it will not kill the beneficial insect, the lady beetle.
I just thought about looking at this from a different angle, Brian. And you know, one of the problems that in the fall that we have in the upper Midwest is we have these huge Asian lady beetles trying to get into our houses so they have a nice warm place to overwinter, whether that's up in the attic and hiding out in insulation there, or just right in our houses where we're living. And this year, I've had a few people say, well, man, there sure are a lot of Asian lady beetles around. Yep. What's going on? Well, one of the things that's changed in agriculture is when farmers are out spraying for problem pests like soybean aphids, for example. In the past, they had used insecticides that would kill Asian lady beetles as well. If you lived on the farm or out in the country, you may say, well, I haven't really had many Asian lady beetles before. Oh, you're welcome. Farmers have been controlling them for you so they aren't a big pest around your house. Well, the good thing about Asian lady beetles is they actually will eat soybean aphids. So now there are some new insecticides like Transform, for example, that will kill those aphids but leave the Asian lady beetles alone. That way, if more aphids flare up later in the season, well, then there's plenty of lady beetles out there to do the job so farmers don't have to use so many pesticides. It's fantastic for the environment. The downside is, for you may have more Asian lady beetles trying to find a home for the winter. So you can't really have it both ways. If you have Asian lady beetle problems, there are insecticides that are safe to spray around your home that will kill the Asian lady beetles so they aren't a problem for you. But farmers really aren't going to be using those down the road in the fields because they found something now that will kill one certain bug but leave the other bugs alone, which is a great thing for the environment and for the farm.
So a lot of people will often ask, well, why do you have to spray insecticides at all? Because there are beneficial insects out there. Well, it really comes back to simple economics. If there are so many of the harmful insects that they damage or even destroy the crop before the beneficial insects can eat all of them, then obviously as a farmer, we don't have a choice. We've got to pull the trigger. We need to go ahead and spray an insecticide. But it's just nice now, and it's obviously to our economic advantage as well, that we have some options that don't kill the beneficial insects, but do kill the target pest.
Well, it would just be wonderful if the only thing that wanted to eat our food was us. The problem is there are insects that like to eat it, and that's why we've got to use things like Transform insecticide to keep our crops safe. One other thing that we'll do to keep our crops safe is control the weeds that compete for water and nutrients with our crops. Can you identify our weed of the week?
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield trait. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a Soil Max Gold Digger tile plow. Soil Max tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with Ag Leader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a Soil Max Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with Soil Max. Visit soilmax.com.
Working in agriculture over the past 3 decades, I saw a need for an accurate way to apply dry product to seed. That's where our Changing Times applicators come in. The CT applicator brush sifts powder into small particles, resulting in proper distribution. Quantities can be adjusted by the speed of the brush rotation. This allows for even and accurate distribution of product. Application at the time of planting can be used with any seed delivery system and saves farmers time, labor, and money. Remember, CT applicators for the changing times.
This year's projected U.S. soybean yield will lose over $500 million per point in shrink. Eliminate shrink in your bin. Store grain without lowering moisture content with the AgriDry Bullseye Temperature and Moisture Controller. The Bullseye monitors air temperature and relative humidity, allowing your fans to utilize the weather's natural condition to maintain your grain at market moisture. Fan runtimes drastically decrease along with the cost of over-drying. Eliminate shrink today. Call now.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
One of the things when Darren and I were growing up on the farm that we always heard our dad say, because we had livestock around the farm, cattle and a lot of hogs, is, well boys, that smell that you smell, that what you call a bad smell, I call it the smell of money. Well, you know what I call it? The smell of lost money. Because here's the way I look at it. What I'm smelling, chances are, is partly ammonia. And you know what ammonia can do for your crops if it's held in the soil until your crops can use it? Nitrogen is the most valuable nutrient that we often talk about on the farm. It costs a lot of money, so I don't want to waste it. So as a farmer who also deals with manure, we're putting manure on our farm. We want to try to use that in the best possible way and save as much of that manure and as many of those valuable nutrients for our crop, and also minimize the smell, because I know when I can smell it, I've lost money.
Well, the smell to me always meant there was more of it for me to scoop by hand when I was a kid, and that was probably a negative for me. But the big positive that I didn't understand at that time was how much that fertility value was in that manure product. And when we look at where crop prices are at right now and where fertilizer prices are at for commercial fertilizer, it makes that manure even more valuable to get the nutrients out there, hopefully at a lower price, especially if they're coming from your own farm. So to use manure in the best possible way and get the maximum yield benefit from it without overdoing it and hurting your crop, that's what we're all about today.
All right, so here's our first piece of advice when it comes to manure application. Get it incorporated, or simply place it below the soil surface as much as you possibly can. So we want to do this quickly. If you're just spreading manure out and then days later you're going to come back and till that in, there's a certain amount of that nitrogen that chances are has gone up in the air. So it's not in most areas that this is regulated or you have to do this or anything else. The only reason why we're bringing it up is we want you to make more money. We want you to get the maximum value of nutrients out of that particular manure. So the other thing that we'll do to help stabilize that nitrogen that's in the manure is use a nitrogen stabilizer. There are many different products out there. Dow makes some, SFP makes some. There are a number of companies that make these products, from Agritain to Instinct to More Than Manure. So a lot of different choices that you have there, but the whole point is we want to do everything we can to stabilize the nitrogen, to put it down below the ground and conserve that manure.
Well, you know, the first thing for me is just getting the manure tested. When you're going to be applying manure to your ground, you really need to send in a sample every year at the minimum, at least once per year, just to see what the nutrient content is, so you know exactly how many pounds or how many tons or how many gallons you're going to be applying per acre. We don't want to overdo things. We've seen it on our own farm where we've got some really sandy ground that's on some hills. Well, when we were coming up the hills trying to pull the manure along as well, we didn't have enough tractor, and so we ended up going a little slower than what we were supposed to be going. And so, well, the manure just kept running. So we put on more manure per acre than what we wanted. And we ended up having too much salt that it actually hurt our crop in that little area. Now, this is not a widespread problem across American agriculture, but you can overdo a good thing. So for the most part on our farm, we're going to be applying manure, but then we're also going to be applying some commercial fertilizer as well to supplement and kind of even things out. Maybe our manure doesn't have exactly the balance that a certain crop needs. Maybe it's corn, maybe it's soybeans, whatever. And you're going to have to apply a little bit of commercial fertilizer to fill in the gaps, so to speak. So take a look at that sample, judge what you're going to do before you get out in the field.
Talking about that sample, that is a real key. You've got to test your manure. It's something we do every single year, and we're looking at that very closely because we don't want to over apply. We also don't want to under apply. We got to make sure that we have the nutrients out there for our crop. Another big thing when we were talking about nitrogen is there are different forms of nitrogen, the inorganic and the organic forms. The question is really how much of the nitrogen is going to come available the next year. And this is one of the big things that my dad would always tell me is he said, look, a lot of times on those tests, they're going to tell you, hey, you have a certain number of pounds of nitrogen that's going to come available year one. I wouldn't count on that completely. Some of that probably isn't going to come available till year two. So just make sure you're not shorting yourself on the nitrogen side with manure, because he said that's the most common issue I've had. So just kind of keep that in mind, but get a good test from a good lab, and then you have a pretty decent idea.
When you think about the nutrients that are in manure, probably the one that gets scrutinized the most across the country is phosphorus, and we are concerned about phosphorus application of any sort out on farms. What we would mainly try to do with phosphorus of any sort, whether it's manure or commercial fertilizer, is get that phosphorus down in the soil. We're worried about what would happen if any of that phosphorus were to run off and end up in a body of water. Phosphorus is generally in fresh water the limiting factor for algae growth. So when you get phosphorus that makes it into a river, stream, or lake, you end up with more algae growth out there. And we don't want that to happen. We don't want more regulation on us as farmers and as fertility appliers to our fields. So bury that manure down 4 to 6 inches or even more if possible. Then you can avoid some of those issues. And when we think about manure management programs, they're mainly concerned with the top 6 inches of soil. If you can bury that manure even deeper. On our farm a few years back, we did some trial work where we were putting manure down as deep as 20 inches in the soil. That was fantastic for our soil. It was great for our crop because now our roots went down deep and they had plenty of fertility. So the root system really expanded down deep in the soil. We saw better drought tolerance, and actually we saw some of that subsoil starting to get black after a few years. We were building more topsoil in our farm, and that was just something great. We were helping the environment out by keeping that phosphorus down deep, and we're helping our soils long term.
Let's step back for a second. Just understand phosphorus doesn't leach in soil, okay? It's basically immobile in soil. So where you put it, that's where it's going to stay until a crop uses it up, or until your soil erodes away. So that's the reason why you've got to get phosphorus down deep in the ground. If it's on the soil surface, guess what? At least a portion of your phosphorus is going to be subject to erosion from either wind or rain. That's a big concern. So when we talk about burying the phosphorus to basically hide it from any soil testing, what we're talking about, it's nothing bad at all for the environment. In fact, it's great for the environment. We're trying to help you save your phosphorus, keep it in your field, and prevent it from being a problem for somebody else. But the other side of it, like Darren said, if we've got more nutrients down deep, that's a big deal, because if you look on most farms, most of the nutrients are all within the top 3 inches. Let's get our valuable nutrients down a little deeper so our roots can go deeper and we can get higher yields.
Speaking of other nutrients that are in manure, there are quite a few different things, whether it's micronutrients, sulfur, whatever. There's plenty of nutrition. That's why that sample is so critical. The other thing to watch is how many of those nutrients are going to be available this year versus how many will take a year or more to become available. So there will be some sort of a time release value to that manure. So keep that in mind as you're planning your fertility program out.
Yeah, one of the other things we've tried to replicate manure versus commercial fertilizer and put the same amount of nutrients out there. There are other things in manure, obviously, from some organic material to microbial activity. Some of those types of things we just can't replicate with commercial fertilizer. But what we've found, and our number one recommendation for you if you have too much ground and not enough manure, is go at a lower rate of manure, get it over more acres, and supplement with commercial fertilizer. You'll most likely end up with higher yields than if you put all your manure on a few acres and all your commercial fertilizer on the other acres.
Well, manure is certainly a valuable product in agriculture. The fertility value of it is fantastic, but there are many more good things about manure if we use it properly on our farms. We prefer to see it buried underneath the soil. Number one, to control the odor, but number two, to save that nutrient value and protect those nutrients so we don't lose them into the environment.
Well, another very important thing that you can do on your farm to improve yields and profitability is control our weed of the week. We'll tell you how to do it on your farm coming up later in the show.
You expect a lot from this seed, and as it grows through each stage of development, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, Agro Liquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From one kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers.
It's a humble idea. Use a biological process to turn a plant into a power source. From that idea came the first Poet refinery. One biorefinery in one town turned into 27 facilities in 27 towns, creating new local jobs, producing hundreds of millions of gallons of ethanol, and providing renewable products around the world. Suddenly, that one little idea seems a whole lot bigger. See the world differently with Poet.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
My data is mine, not mined.
Mine to share,
mine to keep.
It's mine when I want it.
Mine where I want it.
And only mine.
My data is mine to analyze.
Mine to put to work.
Mine to control.
It's mine.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
Our next topic is kind of a challenging one. It's managing fields after a bad disease year. So I especially, Darren, because we've got a lot of farmers interested in raising continuous crop this next year, continuous beans, continuous wheat, continuous corn, is talk about managing some of those issues and specific diseases to each of those crops.
Okay, well, we did have some disease issues this year. There's no question about it, because much of the country got a little more moisture than we've been receiving over the past few years. So when we get more moisture, we have more chance of having diseases. Okay, let's look at soybeans first, because we're hearing a lot of guys across the country saying, what about continuous soybeans? Can I raise more soybeans because it looks like that might be more profitable for me and my farm, or at least I might not lose as much money as I'm probably going to lose raising corn.
All right, let's go through diseases real quick. White mold. How do you solve white mold if you want to be in continuous beans?
Row spacing made a big time difference this year. If we had wider rows, we had less white mold. So you may consider, if I'm in a continuous soybean situation, I might go back to 30-inch rows instead of going in a drill or in a 15-inch row spacing. reversing, I would certainly this fall get contans out on your field. It's going to wipe out a lot of the sclerotia, which are basically the seeds that are going to form little mushrooms next year. They're
How
going
about
to end up being more
varieties?
white mold.
I mean, is there a big difference in varieties?
There is some difference in varieties. Talk to your seed provider about it.
And then what we suggest for herbicide is using some Cobra, then follow up with 2 different fungicides at 2 different timings, R1 and R3. Endure is the best, Proline is next, then Domark. So those are your choices. All right, in terms of other diseases,
sudden death syndrome was one this year that really popped up. So if we have that year, like 2014, where it's exceptionally cool, just wait until a few days later than everybody else plants, and you're going to be in good shape, because that sudden death syndrome is going to be the worst in the fields that are planted very early. Then look at varietal selection. We do have a new seed treatment coming, a Levo from Bayer. It looks pretty good on sudden death syndrome. You use it as a seed treatment, you don't have as much problem later on. You know, we'll see when that gets used across broad acres.
All right, the last disease in soybeans, brown stem rot.
Well, there are a lot of resistant varieties out there, so just choose the right one, you won't have a problem.
All right, corn, Goss's wilt is probably the biggest one.
Varietal selection is the best thing you can do, and of course, tillage. If you've got Goss's wilt, it's going to hang out in that residue, so bury that residue if you can in your area. Otherwise, choose the best hybrid. That's the best thing you can do right now.
Gray leaf spot.
Gray leaf spot you can manage with foliar products. You can use foliar fungicides, get them out there before the gray leaf spot becomes prevalent. You can do a nice job protecting, and then also varietal selection. There are big differences there in gray leaf spot tolerance.
Yeah, but it's just like some of these other diseases that are starting to become tolerant to the strobilurin family. So eye spot, northern corn leaf blight, some of those diseases can all be controlled with a foliar fungicide, but our best advice is use a combination product. Let's turn to wheat real quick. Any of the fusarium diseases, I mean, anything that might stay around from year to year.
I'll say this, the biggest thing in wheat is, and some guys will say, well, if I'm going continuous wheat, then I'm going to use the premium seed treatment package. But if it's just first year wheat, then I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it in both cases because they don't charge that much more for the premium package versus the regular. It takes less than a half a bushel of wheat to justify that difference. And I think you're going to see that more times than not.
Okay, a couple other big tips, and I don't care if it's wheat, it's corn, it's beans, it's any crop. Tillage obviously will help you with disease, but then you've got other issues on that front. But absolutely, if you want to reduce issues with disease, do some more tillage. Seed treatments we've mentioned quite a bit. Using foliar fungicides and timing it right. If you wait too long, you've missed the window of opportunity. So spray early, use multiple modes of action when you're spraying. And there are going to be less expensive fungicides. If you say, oh, I can't use a fungicide, it's all too expensive, those prices are coming down. Don't get too worried about that going into next year. And I guess the other big thing is just making sure you're managing all the other stresses on your farm. If you can do a good job managing your fertility right, reducing drought issues, reducing compaction, taking care of other issues like nematodes and rootworms, other insects, things like that, all those things will absolutely help you when it comes to reducing disease issues.
Well, one other thing you'll definitely have to do to be successful with any crop is control our weed of the week. We'll show you how to do it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Get ready to take control of weeds like never before. Enlist will build on the Roundup Ready system with new herbicide and trait technology, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm.
Our weed of the week is prickly lettuce.
Well, this is just an annual weed, which is a good thing. When a lot of people see it, they think, oh, this is some sort of thistle, and it's gonna be a perennial weed, but it's not. It's just got a simple taproot system, so no big deal there. And when you break a prickly lettuce plant open, you get milky sap. So it's one of those weeds that's got milk inside it. We've got lots of different options for control in crops. It's probably the worst problem in wheat. We see it in a lot of small grain rotations, and we start off with sharpened pre-emerge. That definitely helps. We'll do a nice job burning it down and also get residual. Then post-emerge, I like both the high rate of husky and I also like wide match.
If you do see prickly lettuce, otherwise known as China lettuce, on your farm in the fall, I really like doing a burn down of 2,4-D or Banville. You certainly can do that in the spring too, depending on the crop. Going into soybeans, I'd prefer Authority MTZ. You follow up. Roundup is really pretty decent. Post-emerge Classic has some activity. There are a few others as well. In corn, I think Verdict is probably the best, and Status would be my favorite post.
Well, that's all time for our Weed of the Week, prickly lettuce, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
If you lime a no-till field, does the lime affect anything below the top inch or two? Is tillage the only way lime can help your land? Over the last few years, we've run a number of lime tests on our land, and over the years there have been countless trials run by universities, farmers, and others in ag. Here's what we've learned. First, tillage speeds up the process of raising subsoil pH with lime. However, it's quite common to find pH levels at 6 or 8 inches increasing a little bit in the short term and much more in the long term after lime is applied. Lime doesn't just stay where you put it. The calcium carbonate that helps raise pH can move down with soil moisture. We found within 2 to 3 years in even our heaviest soils that pH and overall calcium levels can be raised even at the 18 to 24 inch depth without deep tillage. However, since we know that this occurs more slowly in no-till, it means that no-tillers must watch their soils more closely and apply amendments sooner than conventional till farmers. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show. It's easy to stay busy on your farm over the winter, hauling grain, getting ready for next spring, or a host of other jobs that always seem pressing. However, if you want to make 2015 your best year ever, it's important to invest some of your time learning. I invite you to spend at least one day attending a free Ag PhD workshop. We have a new format, new information, and more tips to help you improve your yield and, most importantly, your profits. Go to agphd.com and register today.
Hi, my name's Kalina Gillespie, and I am the Senior Customer Service Manager for Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers. But I am also the mother of a United States Marine Corps reservist, and that is one of the reasons I wanted to find a way to help our military men and women. Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers has decided to join forces with me and Operation Homefront in giving back to these military men and women. They will donate a penny per gallon delivered in the month of November and a penny per gallon ordered in the month of November.
No one understands your farm, your field, and your soil like you. I'm Myron Stein, and at Stein Seed Company, we know your field demands a choice. That's why Stein's corn breeding program combines our industry-leading genetics and superior standability with the most sought-after traits, giving you the best choices for maximum yield. Learn more about Stein's hybrid lineup by visiting steinseed.com or contacting your local Stein Seed dealer.
How will you secure your farm for the future? The Quasar Chopping Cornhead from Capello USA will help. Our design is focused on efficiency, longevity, and reducing harvest loss, making the Quasar the corn harvest solution to bring your farm forward. With hundreds of units ready for immediate delivery, secure your farm's future today. Do it for your farm. Do it for them. Order now. Capello USA. Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandeco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving and rocks and has contour conformity equaling zero downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandeco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandeco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but if you're looking for more agronomic information, we invite you to tune in to the Ag PhD radio show each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on Sirius XM Channel 80. That's the Rural Radio Channel.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show, where we'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
75 to 95% of soil-applied phosphorus may be tied up and made unavailable to plants. Farmers use organic proteins and other fertilizer innovations to ensure their crops are fed properly. For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.